The Tuareg are the traders who dominated the Sahara and who influenced African culture far beyond their homeland. The Tuareg women are renowned for their poetry singing, accompanied by playing on monochord fiddle called the imjad or the anjad. And it can be played either vertically or horizontally. I won't try to do the singing, but it's something like, ah! It's blues. All you have to do is change the words to some of the words that we have in our blues, and you've got the blues. This is typical of that area, the East Sahara. I saddle up my camel, going into town. I wrap my turban around me, but I'm feeling really down, 'cause I got the blue man blues. I'm just as blue as I can be. We've been talking about skin-covered instruments. These things are different shapes, big, huge, round ones, little ones. They're all over the Sahara area and below that. Found throughout northern Africa in many forms and various names. One of the most interesting of these names is the Mandi term banjolo. If that's not a banjo, I don't know what it is. Another thing from African heritage was drums. This is a North African drum, and the interesting thing about it, it has strings on it to make it sort of sizzle when you play it. I'm going to show you a couple of typical African rhythms that came to New Orleans and were played by famous New Orleans drummer Baby Dodds on the bass drum rim. With two sticks playing the same beat together. Why? Because they would have a row of drummers. So they wanted to hear the two sounds at once. Another pattern that Baby Dodds used was this one. Where did we get the bass drum from? Well, that came from the Turks, because the John Philip Sousa military bands were developed from the Turkish marching band centuries ago. When the Turks would attack a village in Eastern Europe, the band would be heard for miles away and everybody knew the Turks were coming so they could flee their village. That music was kind of scary. Everybody said, well, let's have our own version of the Turkish music so we can scare the people in the next village. Eastern European and Western European military bands were developed on the Turkish model with the bass drum, which was something like this. It was called davul in Turkey, and it was played something like this. Okay, you notice they have these strings here that rattle. It used to be just a stick that would rattle, but then they said, well, why don't we have the strings do the rattling, and then we can use the stick for other things. And so that's where we got these strings across the bass drum, which became the strings that are across the snare drum. The snare drum is actually a small version of the bass drum. I'll play the other Turkish main instrument that went with it, called the zurna. The zurna is a double reed instrument similar to the oboe, but a lot shriller. Okay, so that's where we got our marching band, our military band, our parade band. Instead of the zurna, the clarinet took over. They had trumpets like they did in the Turkish band, and then we added the trombone, and we also added the cymbal, which was a Turkish instrument, and the triangle. So actually the instrumentation for early jazz came from the Turks through the Europeans. The rhythms came from Africa, and the syncopation came from Africa. They actually say the word jazz is an Arabic root that means to cut short, or maybe to speed up, or possibly syncopate.
It all starts out with mon cher cousin, mon cher cousin, my dear cousin female, dear cousin male, qui aime manger bien, that like to eat well, fait la cuisine, cook, boire plein de vin, maybe not in Utah, drink a lot of wine, n'écoutez pas rien, don't listen to anybody. And then the next one is Un jour manger combien poisson. One day I ate so much fish. Moi, gonflé comme un ballon, that I blew up like a balloon. Et mon when they rolled me comme un gros cochon, like a big old pig. Then the last one is so pertinent. Moi, l'aime tant tout mon cul. I loved her so much with all my heart. Et lui donné tout mon argent. Gave her all my money. Et puis she took off and left me avec rien qu'un caleçon, with nothing but a pair of shorts. I don't know if that's ever happened to anybody before, but
Eventually, in the 1920s, Chicago became a new center for jazz. The first prominent group of the Chicago era was the King Oliver Band.
So anyway, Dipper Mouth Blues.
Sounded similar to Johnny Dodds, but more exacting. So Dr. Jazz was one of the pieces recorded by Morton's group in the 1920s, which inspired later bands.
Steady pounding of all four rhythm instruments is taken over just by the right cymbal and the bass. And then the three instruments weaving in counterpoint that we heard in New Orleans and Chicago Jazz, they combine them all together, so one guy's playing all those parts at once, like, so making it kind of hard to do.